This is Robert Capuccio. Welcome to the Self-Help Antidote, a weekly dose of reason, perspective, and insight, where we challenge conventional thinking and explore authentic strategies and insights around personal transformation. Our commitment to you is to bring you some of the world's leading experts in the domains of fitness, wellness, coaching, and behavior change, separating fact from fallacy. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Self-Help Antidote. This is Bobby, and today we're going to dive into a powerful analogy that I believe can help us understand the science of behavior change. The analogy is that of a hill, and it's a simple metaphor that ties together some of the most impactful models of change. Today, I want to talk about three of them. One is motivational interviewing, two would be the Transtheoretical Model of Change, and three is social cognitive theory. Now, whether you're a coach, whether you're in a leadership position, or whether you're someone that's just working on your own personal or professional goals, or you might just happen to be curious about how does change happen and where's the evidence to support this, this episode will walk you through it step by step. So let's get started. Imagine this for a second. You're standing at the base of a hill. Now, this hill metaphorically represents a change that you're considering, whether it's quitting smoking, getting into an exercise routine, or even something broader like improving your mindset. Now, the journey up the hill is about preparation. The climb is hard, right? But the effort to prepare yourself for change is just as important as taking the first step, because the other side of the hill represents what's known as action and maintenance. And once you've climbed it, you've got momentum. So how do we navigate both sides? And that's where these behavior change models start to intersect with one another. So let's start to break this down. When you're standing at the bottom of the hill, we can call this pre-contemplation, or stage one of Di Clemente and Prochaska's Transtheoretical Model of Change. So starting at the very bottom in pre-contemplation, this is where most people aren't even considering change. Imagine standing at the foot of a really steep, arduous looking hill, to be fair, with your arms crossed and saying, not today. This is where people start to say things like, I don't need to quit smoking, or why should I work out? I'm fine. I could just get started next year or next month or next whatever. They're not even ready to contemplate the possibility of climbing. And why is this? Well, there's a couple of reasons. Maybe they're just unaware of the consequences of their behavior. Maybe they're not properly motivated yet. But I think, simply put, you could break these people down into two categories. Category one are people who live in the I won't do this. I don't have a problem. Other people might think I have a problem, but I don't think I have a problem. Or the problem isn't really big enough to justify the effort and the work that would go into solving it. Another person in pre-contemplation realizes they have a problem. They might even realize the magnitude of the problem, but based on their past experience, they don't have enough evidence to suggest that they're capable of getting to the other side of their proverbial hill. So this person isn't necessarily coming from the mindset of I won't. They might be coming from the mindset of I can't, but it doesn't matter, because at this stage, I won't or I can't, they're not even contemplating whether or not they're going to climb. So in this stage, motivational interviewing helps by planting seeds of what Rolnick and Miller refer to as preparatory talk. We're not trying to push someone up the hill. We're just inviting them to look at the hill and think about what might be at the top for you. And what might happen if you were able to start to climb once you got to the top? When you were on the other side of the hill, how might that feel? What might your experience of life be like? And how would that work? So when we talk about preparatory talk, we're specifically talking about desire, ability, reasons, and need to change. Think about the acronym DARN, right? D is for desire, A is for ability, R is for reasons, and N is for need. This is where we start to get someone to think about change, even if they're not ready to take the first step yet. So imagine you're a coach talking to someone who's in this stage. And instead of saying, well, you really need to exercise more because of the health concerns that your doctor voiced, you might start to ask more open ended types of questions that spark reflection. So, an example might be, what might be different if you could start exercising regularly? That taps into desire. What is it that this person wants? What do you think you're capable of doing right now to improve your health? That speaks to ability. They start to think about, okay, I might not be able to make that journey to the other side of the hill. Maybe they can't see themselves going the full distance and transforming who they are, their identity, or some aspect of their life. But there might be one thing that they're capable of doing, and we could focus on that. So the role of a coach is not that of a director. You're not telling people what to do or where to go or who they should be. It's that of a guide. And when do you hire a guide? Like if you're going to go on a journey and you land in a train and you want to go on a hike, but you don't know the landscape, you would hire a guide because you know that there might be something in this journey for you, but you can't see yourself going the distance, or you feel that you can't see yourself having enough capability or knowledge. What does good guide do? They help you go just as far as you can see, because what happens when you get there? The obvious answer is you can see further. Another question is, what are some of the reasons that you might have thought about making a change, even if you haven't acted on it yet? And this pulls out reasons. Another question might be, what's pushing you to think about doing this right now? Like, if you're not ready to take a step yet, that's fine. But what made this conversation we're having important now? And that's a question that gets them talking about the need to change. So whenever somebody's talking about desire to change, they're talking about the capability or the ability they have to change. You're eliciting conversations around the reason or the need. You are guiding that individual through preparatory talk that starts to lead to more committal types of language that support taking action. So in easy for me to say, in social cognitive theory, we know that people learn through observation and through their environment. So in this early stage, it might be critical to help someone see examples of change in others, maybe by sharing stories or experiences that resonate. Seeing other people succeed builds self-efficacy. So here's an example. Let's say you're talking to someone and they just don't think that change is possible for them. It could be, well, who do you know that has a level of result in the area that we're talking about? So if we're talking about fitness and weight loss, who do you know that's really fit, that seems engaged, energized, that has the type of body that you might want to have? Tell me a story about who this person is and what it looks like in the day of the life of someone who is really fit and energized, engaged. They're able to manage their stress. What's that story like? What do you think that person does every day specifically in order to be able to live that type of life and be engaged in health and fitness in that manner? And when we talk about this, what we're looking for is specific behaviors. Like, what do they do? Well, they might get up at 5 o'clock every morning and make sure that they go to the gym. Before they eat a meal, they might think about, well, how's this meal going to impact me? How's this meal going to affect my energy levels? So I'm going to choose something plant-based rather than something, I don't know, processed, like a greasy double bacon cheeseburger with a sugary bun. Who knows? Just as an example. What we're not looking for is, well, what this person does every day is they're motivated. They demonstrate commitment. There's nothing specific there. We're not saying that motivation and commitment don't support behavior change. They absolutely do, but they're not something that we can measure. So when you tell me the story about someone who is really successful in an area that you might want to be successful in yourself, like what are the behaviors that they engage in that we may, if we choose, want to model in the future? And what are things that they don't do? This person might not stay up late binging on Netflix every single night, drinking wine and eating a bag of crisps, let's say. So get down all of these things. And later on in the conversation, we might say, well, out of all of these things that we mentioned, right? So we talked about this person does A, B, and C, and they don't do A, B, and C. Out of that list, which one's more compelling? Which one do you think you might be more capable of? Some of the things on the omission or on the commission list? Out of those three or out of those four, which one of those do you think you might enjoy engaging in most? That's desire. Which one of those do you think you might be more capable in? Well, that's speaking to capacity or ability. And the same thing. Like, which one of those would you have the most amount of reasons, or which one would be most urgent? Or which one of those things, if you didn't engage in, do you think might over time bring about the most consequences to not being done? Both of those last questions speak to need. So these are just a couple of ways that you can start to elicit preparatory talk through engaging in inquiry. Let's talk about as we start to climb that first part of the hill. So now we're moving into contemplation and preparation. These are stages 2 and 3 in the Transtheoretical Model of Change. So if we're at the contemplation stage, at this point, the person's looking at the hill and they're thinking, okay, I might, okay, maybe I could climb it. Oh, it looks tough. They've recognized that there's a problem, but they're kind of weighing the pros and the cons of making a change. This is where a person is struggling with ambivalence. And what I mean by that is they have two things that they want that are in conflict with one another. I want to stay at the base of the hill because it's comfortable. Maybe at the base of the hill is where a lot of my friends hang out and I get social reward and intimacy and connection. But you know what? I want what's on the other side of that hill. And I know there's going to be a climb. And this is where desire, ability, reasons, and need start to come into play. As a coach, or even as someone who is an invested friend, you can guide them into a more focused conversation about their future. You can help them weigh the cost of staying the same versus the benefit of climbing the hill. So how do we do that exactly? And that's a really good question. Here's an example. Let's say somebody wants to reduce their sugar intake and they've been going back and forth, and you ask them, okay, well, on a scale from 1 to 10, Jane, how important is making this change to you? And they say something like a 5. Well, you could ask, so you have a fair bit of commitment, but you seem like you're kind of on the fence. What made you say a 5 and not a 3? When you ask that question, you're inviting them to reflect on their reasons why making a change would be valid, and maybe even exploring pushing a little bit higher. In social cognitive theory, we might emphasize self efficacy, the belief that they can successfully climb the hill. So if they don't believe that they'll do it, they're never going to start. A lot of times people don't start things because they just don't have enough motivation, or they're lazy, or they lack character. They just don't have the belief. Why would you start engaging in something that's arduous? You're going to have to sacrifice something else, to be fair, in order to gain that. But you have zero belief that you're going to succeed in the end, or that you're even going to enjoy the journey on the road to what in your mind is inevitable failure. Who would engage in something like that? So part of our job at this stage is to show them that they can actually succeed if they break the climb into small, manageable steps. So, if this hill is going to take you 3 months to climb, okay, this is a pretty big hill here. What would it look like if you were successfully ascending up one side of the hill by this time next week? That's much more palatable. And a week in the future elicits a lot more motivation than 3 months in the future. Because the further the goal is in the future, the more people are thinking about all the steps it's going to take to get there and about all the things they're going to sacrifice. Where success is 1 week in the future, that creates more motivation. We tend to discount goals that are achieved the further that they're achieved in the future. And this is referred to as temporal discounting. Now, let's talk about getting them over that hill. Preparation and action. That's what lies on the other side, stage 3 and 4 of the transtheoretical model. And if we're in preparation, you're dealing with someone who at this point decided to lace up their shoes. They're standing at the base of the hill, they're stretching out their legs, they're mentally preparing for a climb, but then their languaging starts to shift from preparatory talk to what we would refer to as change talk. And here's where the first level of change talk, commitment talk from motivational interviewing starts to come into play. Like we laid out an acronym DARN. DARN, again, desire, ability, reasons, and need. Here, we get them talking about the darn cat. Now, the darn cat is something that I scream out every morning when my cat bites my toes at about 3:30 a.m. But in this acronym, what we're actually talking about when we say darn cat is shifting from preparatory to commitment talk, where the language is not about I want to, or I think I could, or talking about I need. It starts to shift to I will. And that is something to listen for. When somebody starts going from I should to I want to I will, that's one clue that they're starting to enter into change talk. So when we start making plans that are specific and actionable, we're no longer talking about the possibility of change. We're talking about gearing up to take action. You might hear things like, I'll sign up for that gym membership next week. I'm going to make that call, make that appointment. Or, you know what? I've been reading this book on how to reduce my sugar intake. And one of the things that I think I can do is switch out soda for maybe sparkling water. These statements are all signs that they're getting ready to go. And at this stage in social cognitive theory, what it tells us is that self-regulation becomes critical. They need to monitor their progress and they need to set goals and start to adjust as they go. But it's not just about the behavior. They're going to have to deal with all of the thoughts that start to come up when that hill starts getting steep. And you know what that's like when you're excited, like let's say somewhere around January 4th and you're going full on, but then on January 20th, you're like, you know what? I really like a piece of cake now. This gym stuff is really difficult. And that's where self-efficacy that you're building throughout the earlier stages of the transtheoretical model starts to come in and starts to get really important. So on the downside of the hill, which is commitment and taking action, stage 4 and stage 5. And let me just stop here for a second before I even get into this. So let's talk about the cat. The first letter in the CAT acronym is for C, commitment. And it's usually when they reference I will. The A stands for activation. They start to talk about I'm ready. Not only will I do this, but I'm going to do this in the very near future or now. And the T is probably the most powerful because the key in CAT stands for taking action. This is the difference between, okay, you know what? I'm going to call the gym this week. And the more specific, the greater the likelihood that they're going to follow through. Like I made an appointment with a gym advisor for this Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. That's great, but it's not as powerful as I already went to the gym. I met with the advisor. I joined the gym, man, and I'm looking forward to that first orientation appointment with the trainer this coming Monday. So they've already taken action, giving themselves evidence, even to a small but significant degree, that they're the type of person that aligns their behaviors with wellness and fitness-based goals. So now that they've started climbing in the action stage, momentum is building. But here's the trick. And when I say action, what I mean by action is they've been doing something for a period of time, right? They just started engaging in the thing that they said that they were going to do. The trick is climbing the hill is never smooth, upward linear path. It's rocky. You have to divert course. Sometimes you slip on a rock and you fall backwards a bit and you got to climb back up to where you are. And you lost a bit of that momentum you were so proud of. In other words, it's challenging. So when they're slipping, stumbling, or falling back a bit, this is where the commitment talk needs to get stronger, right? And if you can get them to say things like, I can do this, or yes, I'm sticking to my plan, you're reinforcing self efficacy. And sometimes how you do this is by referring, well, how did you get going on that hill in the first place? Going from standing at the base of the hill, not even thinking this was capable, this was something you were capable of, and kind of getting up that hill, even like halfway. What were some of the things you implemented to do that? What were some of the strengths you employed? What were the attributes that allowed you to succeed? What do you now know about yourself? So if you started climbing that hill and it's been a smooth climb up until day 4 got challenging, day 5 was a nightmare. Well, what was your best day? Tell me about that. Maybe you slept the night before, like right there, and you had the energy to climb that hill. Maybe you laced up your shoes a little bit tighter so you didn't lose your footing. And what can we learn from our most arduous day on day 5? Maybe it's I need to hydrate a little bit more on the hill. Don't wait till I'm thirsty. It's a matter of what do I learn that doesn't discourage me, but gives me evidence that I'm capable of this. And as a coach, this is where you're guiding the individual with strategies that offer activation cues to keep them going. Because remember, they're on the downside of the hill right now. They've got momentum. They're not going against, they're going with gravity, but they still need help navigating those rocks because it's still challenging. So in social cognitive theory, this is where reinforcement and observational learning becomes really critical. They need to be able to see their progress. They need to feel successful and reinforce those positive actions. Positive feedback is what fuels their climb. It's like they're getting closer to the top, and the closer they get, the more momentum they start to build for themselves that they need to drive them over the finish line. So having people reflect day by day, what were you most proud of? What was your best moment? What were some things that made it difficult? At what point did you doubt yourself? But you know what? You still pushed through and succeeded. What'd you learn from that? All of these things start to become absolutely critical. And now let's talk about maintaining the change. Moving into stage 5 of the Transtheoretical model, which is in maintenance, which means they've been doing something for a period of time, usually about 6 months or more. So it's not like, okay, I have my first orientation, I'm getting started. It's like I've been at the gym fairly consistently now for like 6 months. When somebody's at this stage, they've really achieved something significant. So there's been a major milestone that's been made. And this is where you're walking down the hill. And, at this point, it's a little bit easier now. Not because the hill's gotten easier, but your confidence and your level of ability has been elevated. But you still need to stay aware. But this is where taking steps becomes about consistency. Taking steps is not something within the CAT acronym that gets us going. It's something that keeps the momentum accelerating through every step of the journey. In motivational interviewing, you celebrate each time someone takes a step because every small action matters. Even if it feels like they're going downhill now, they've got a lot of gravity working with them, but they still need to maintain focus to avoid slipping back into their old habits. And then there's one final stage. And this is when you're on the other side of the hill, but it's called termination. And this is stage 6 of the Transtheoretical model. This is where taking action and transforming myself from a non-exerciser into an exerciser, what I do, what I don't do, it's not the point. The point is who I've become. So if you're listening to this right now, what are you really good at that's part of your identity? And if you're an exerciser, it's not like, oh, well, I go to the gym every 3 weeks. It's like, no, I'm an exerciser. It's part of my identity. Exercise isn't something I do, it's something I am. And if you've been consistently exercising for 1 year, 5 years, a decade, think about this for a second. What's your big overarching goal that's motivating you? Because I've asked this in rooms filled with hundreds of professional trainers. And when I say, well, how many of you have a specific aesthetic goal you're working towards, or an event, right? Like you're doing some type of challenge, or you've got, like, let's say, a marathon coming up in the next 3 to 6 months. you get like 5% of the room that raises their hand. And my question becomes, oh, so 95% of you, because there's not a goal you're working towards, I'm imagining you're not exercising right now. And half the room looks at you like you're a little bit crazy. The other half laughs because they get what you're getting at. And that is, even if you don't have a goal, exercise is something you're going to do because you see yourself as an exerciser. I mean, you're far more likely to sit down and write that next book or that first book, even if you see yourself as a writer, as part of your identity. So in termination, our identity has been transformed. We don't see ourselves as someone struggling to even take the first steps, who's kind of like weighing the pros and cons. Look, this is who I am. This is what I do. And at that point, unless something really tragic happens that completely throws you off of your routine, you're likely to keep doing what you've been doing. So it's not just about taking the steps. It's about structuring your environment and shaping your identity in a way that elicits the behaviors that are in line with whatever you're after, whether that's, career satisfaction, whether that's being at your optimal weight and feeling energized and, being cognitively and emotionally connected and engaged in everything you're doing. So climbing that hill of change step by step is how we go from becoming someone new. Like Les Brown said, if you're going to do something you've never done before, you need to become someone you've never been before. And the beauty of models like the Transtheoretical Model, Motivational Interviewing, social cognitive theory is that they remind us that, change is not linear. It's not about perfection. It's about progress. Every stage from contemplation to the climb, to taking the first steps, to maintaining your pace down the other side, to becoming the embodiment of what it is that you want to be, have, or do is all part of the process. And you don't necessarily have to be at the top of the hill to seek success, because taking that first step from the base of the hill is in fact a success, and then taking the next one and the next. And as a coach, your job is to help as many people not only see the hill, but believe that they can climb it one step at a time. So thanks for joining me today. And if you've got any questions or thoughts about how we can navigate these models of behavior change together, reach out, give me your ideas, keep climbing your hill, no matter how steep it is. And I promise you, the view from the top will definitely be worth it. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Visit us at theselfhelpantidote.com to share your feedback, insights, and recommendations on what topics you'd like us to explore in the future.